Look at that. Control. Hi, I'm Karl. This is some of my early work. At some point in the 80s, the late 80s, I was taught machine code by a tribe of very friendly robots. At some point, I was a Perl hacker. I still use Java, and now I'm an iOS developer. And I ended up working on a little app called Camera Plus. And I talked about how I became part of that team on their One More Thing podcast, preempting me, regaling you with that story this afternoon. So, instead I'll show you this. The lowest resolution photo available of the Camera Plus team on the launch day in June 2010. So pretty good going for a camera app. Obviously, we only had 3GSs at this time, but this was probably taken with a 5D. From the left, this is me, this is John, Lisa, and Scott. Not included here is Wolfgang, our graphic designer, and we've added several people to the team since this photo was taken. I really like the default iPhone UI. It's reasonably good looking, although I have friends that don't appreciate the pinstripes. There are some of them here today. But too much defaultness in your UI gets a bit boring. So in Camera Plus, we decided that what we wanted to do is make a UI that was a bit more special, that was a bit more distinctive, but to anchor what we did on the default UI so that people understood how to use it, they knew, they weren't scared by it, they knew what it did. And this is roughly how Camera Plus looks today. I'm hoping that most of you have seen it. And this is the first design that we ever did on Camera Plus. So this was done at 9:42 in the morning on the 19th of June 2009. Shortly after I'd returned to New Zealand from WWDC. Wolfgang was in Austria, John was in San Francisco. One of us always gets the wrong end of the time zone stick when we're working together. We had a very basic idea of what the app would do at this stage. We thought that people would choose a scene mode, then shoot a photo. But the big idea that we had was that we wanted to make the app look like a high-end camera. So I don't know if you can see, you sort of can, the kind of crocodile skin texture that you get on the back of the camera, and we had this old school LCD display. So that was the main idea, and that's kind of what we started with. And we worked on this in this first design session for about 6 hours, which is not an atypical length for the design session. And I think we created 45 screen mock-ups as we explored what the app would do. So, as I said, the app was really simple when we started. Choose a scene mode, you go through it, apply that scene mode, you took a photo. So we tried to make this app that was very much like sort of a point-and-shoot camera of the day. And we thought we'd design it, code it, release it, a couple of weeks tops, we'd be away. But as we went through the design process and we created more and more mock-ups and we sort of realized that we wanted to do more. So, in fact, that was a recurring danger on the project, that if you didn't implement something really quickly, it would go back into the design and become even more complex. So, I usually begin an app with basic wireframes. Or sometimes I just like to dive straight into the code because I often think, this is an app, it's a coding problem, I'll solve the code problem. But Wolfgang, a designer, he turns out these screen mock-ups so quickly. As I said, we worked 6 hours, he made 45 of them. That was actually a small number of screen mock-ups of this kind of quality in that period of time, that we were able to work at this level. So immediately we're exploring sort of what the app would be in a really visual way. We could really see the app taking shape. This is the editing screen, which we sort of refined over a period of 4 design sessions. That's sort of roughly 4 weeks. And in that time, we changed the app from being a choose a scene mode and then shoot model to a post-processing model where we'd come through with all these different effects and apply them to the photo afterwards. This is the evolution of the home screen. So over the course of about 6 sessions, we arrived at the design on the right, which is pretty much how the version 1 of the app was released. We wanted this home screen on the right. We wanted it to feel like you're holding up your SLR in front of a scene. So we had the standard viewfinder view of the camera behind it, and then hidden in this little SLR viewfinder, we had a small view of the same thing. So we had 2 real-time viewfinders on the screen, which is a real challenge to do in iOS 3. But it looked pretty cool. We also had a pretty cool transition from the home view to the camera. You see here, we kind of zoom in through the viewfinder until it becomes a viewfinder, and then zoom back on out. And the transitions between the screens were also a crucial part of what we did in Camera Plus to make it really stand out. We actually eventually, as you know if you're using the app now, removed this from the app maybe around version 2, so that we launched straight into the camera view, which was a massive win for user experience, but a massive loss for those of us who spent days animating all of that stuff. So pulling together the home screen and these screens together, we started building the app. I took Photoshop files, exported layers, built UI. I decided not to use zibs, preferring to hand code everything as UI views. And pretty soon we had a working app. But if you use the first release of Camera Plus, you realize it didn't look like this. Because as we had this working app and started to play around with it, we realized that we're missing something that we hadn't yet conceived of, and that was the lightbox. So these are some early mock-ups. In fact, this is the first mock-up of the lightbox. So lightbox is one of the most interesting parts of Camera Plus. And it's quite unusual, as all the other apps at the time were saving all of their photos into the camera roll. But it became clear after we were sort of poring over the designs and using the app that we wanted to have an intermediary place where you could put your photos first so that you could edit them, post-process them and do that before you actually save them out to the camera roll. We all had quite cluttered camera rolls, and we felt like we wanted to separate these things out. But as a developer, that was pretty heartbreaking because I thought, we've almost got the app done. The app was a known quantity, and suddenly we add this whole extra screen, and with this screen comes a whole lot of extra things. Like there was no sharing in the app before we added the lightbox, and sharing is not just a small thing just to tack onto the app. So but obviously this was a much better idea. So we regrouped and continued. And the editing interface then had to change. So you notice that it progressed through here, through these kind of awkward oval buttons at the bottom, down to the interface that's kind of a bit more familiar on the right-hand side with the tabs. Overall, it was a really good and fun process evolving the app through the design process, and it gave the app a real user focus. Because if something made sense in the design, such as we should have sharing because we've got this lightbox now, this would make sense. Then we added it to the app, and if something didn't, if we had a feature that we were thinking about that we couldn't think how to work it into the design of the app, then it didn't get added. So we sort of focused at that level all the way through this. And working with these full mock-ups was a really important part of that process because we could really see how it would take shape. And we talked this morning about how wireframes don't necessarily help you do that. Camera Plus is obviously based on standard UI with standard positions for toolbars, nav bars, tab bars, buttons that look like buttons. But it's not standard UI, and people really love that. Perhaps except for the typeface, some people really hate Brie, if you want to call them people. But a typeface is a key part of making the whole app feel quite unique. So it also resulted in some really interesting extra attention to detail. You'll notice here that the standard gutters between bars and navigation bar are 8 points on the iPhone, 8 pixels on non-Retina, 16 pixels on Retina. But with the Brie buttons, we decided that we needed an extra 2 points. Hence our catchphrase, if it's Brie, let it breathe. So as you can see, 10 points makes all the difference. Also, we look at this the lightbox is just a view of thumbnails, right? This has been done several times before. Apple have got this in their app. But you add some shadows and put them all on a jaunty angle, and you transform a boring, done-to-death kind of interface into something which is beautiful and special, and people talk about. Before you've edited your photos, we join them up with this film strip background because they're still negatives, right? We're still putting the finishing touches on these little things at sort of 4 in the morning on the day before we first uploaded Camera Plus to the App Store. So we really put a lot of kind of attention to that sort of stuff. The lightbox, as well as being a late addition, it was a real pain to implement. Although I didn't have the pleasure of building the first version of it, I did finish it. And it's interesting particularly how the layout paradigm changes when you're dealing with groups of photos, such as in these thumbnails to single photos, and then you edit one and it's no longer part of the group and things all turn around. So there's some interesting technical challenges. I also had a really interesting time improving the scrolling performance of the lightbox. We started with the core graphics implementation because that was what I knew, and with rotations and shadows, and the performance was kind of good enough, right? Like it was okay, but after a while, we then tried re-implementing it in CA layers, which was fantastic. Like it was heaps faster, and you could really just sort of throw it, and it would slide like Apple's one. which was impossible with our core graphics implementation. But we encountered a really interesting CA layer problem, which I don't know if you've seen, but I thought I'd share because I really like it. The rotations on CA layers give you these jaggies, which I've really illustrated. Oh my goodness, that's actually Scott Mines as part of the Camera Plus team. What an odd guy. Sorry, Scott. So you can solve this problem by adding 1 pixel of transparency around your content in your CA layer, and then the CA layer can anti-alias into that because it can't anti-alias outside of its bounds. But if you add 1 pixel around everything, then you have to increase the bounds, and then you're off by 1, everything like that, which is a major pain. And I thought this is going to be terrible. We may have to actually abandon this CA layer performance improvement. But it turns out that you just need to add this to your info P list, set it to true, and all your CA layers will be anti-alias and everything's fine. So keep an eye on that. Apparently, maybe your performance might suffer if you do that. I don't know. It didn't hurt us. It looked really good. So after a year of design and development on Camera Plus, we finally released it. You hear this all the time. Most of us are possessed by wanting to release something. When it gets to 95% of the way done, I just want to ship it, call it 1.0, then I can finally start working on 1.01 and fix all the bugs, right? But the finishing touches on a project, they can take an age, and uncertainties build up. I think this is especially true in the App Store environment. You've got no idea how well your app's going to do. You've got no idea someone's going to come out. You've always got this fear someone's going to come out with my idea before me, so I need to get into the market first. But and then all your effort's going to be in vain. But what you don't realize is that, you probably do realize, but if you don't polish this app or make it as good as it can be or as special as it can be, then it's like a self-fulfilling doomsday prophecy, because your users want your app to be really polished, and they just won't like it if it comes out too early. So as you can imagine, on Camera Plus, there were lots of times when we wanted to ship early, but if there's one thing that I learned is that taking the time to make something really special gives you a huge advantage. Camera Plus release was timed with the iPhone 4 keynote. Obviously, this is a 3GS photo, pretty ugly. But it says this at WWDC 2010. There's a real risk that our launch could have just been eaten up by the iPhone 4 kind of publicity machine. But we actually, we made quite a lot of noise on Twitter, and we found that the attention on all things iPhone, everyone's attention was on iPhones at that time, and especially on photography with the improved camera, that it kind of dragged us along with it. My computer is full of screenshots like this, just draw the attention. I'm really pleased that I took those. This is on the 9th of June, 2 days after release. We were #1 in the photography section of the US App Store, even in new and noteworthy. This is 3 days later, we're #7 in the top paid apps in the US App Store. So it was a pretty fantastic app launch. And how to launch an app and to promote an app is quite a mystery to many developers, and myself included. It's not the thing that we're best at, but it's such a huge part of this game. So let me tell you a bit about what we did for Camera Plus. We started with Twitter, and we offered a really large prize, $10,000 worth of camera gear if you tweeted about the app, which generated a lot of buzz on Twitter. Really sorry about the spam. And then we continued to communicate with people and keep them thinking about and talking about Camera Plus through Twitter, through photography competitions like this, on the blog. And John blogs things that I wouldn't normally share, right? He, such as sales figures like this. I wouldn't normally talk about sales figures with people, but he puts this on the blog sort of on a monthly, bi-monthly basis. And this sort of openness attracts a lot of attention. It paints a story of success, but people are really interested in this kind of information because there's not a lot of this kind of information or people talking like this. So it attracts a lot of attention, people talk about it, people talk about Camera Plus, and it builds up this brand. John also blogs with a style that attracts attention. And we made an infographic. Wow. We put the same level of effort and attention into developing in the app as we put into marketing the app. So one of these things reinforces the other. And then there's app updates. So we run a cycle of a major release followed by 1 or 2, maybe 3, bug fix releases. People love bug fixes. When we released Camera Plus 3, I mean the new Camera Plus, in March this year, please, I need one of those slides. There are admittedly some bugs in this release. Right, but we use an automated crash reporting tool called Hockey App, so we started receiving crash reports pretty much immediately. If you don't use something like this, it's just the absolute best way to find out what's happening for your app and to address problems before you read about them. So for the 2 weeks that version 3 was in the App Store, we logged over 58,000 crashes. We released 3.01, it was in the store for a further 2 weeks, 18 days, with only 8,500 crashes. And then version 3.02, which has been in the store for 38 days, when I took the screenshot on Monday, with only 11,000 crashes. So that means we took the app from 4,000 crashes a day to 300 crashes a day, right? Which that makes a lot of people, that many people, heaps happier and translates into much better reviews and better ratings. In fact, after suffering a crash and then rage reviewing your app, when you release a fix, those people, what we found is they come back and they give you a nice rating or a nice review. And what we suspect is that if they just used the app and had a nice experience in the first place, they never would have written anything. So it's almost like an evil plan. Yeah, it's certainly one we repeat. You can also create genuinely grateful users. So when we found about these crashes, we tracked people down. So in blog comments and on Twitter. I even stalked people in the App Store. It's amazing how many people use the same name in their App Store comments as they use elsewhere on the web. I'm still Facebook friends with some of these people. They found on there, I'm not sure how long is polite before you unfriend them. But when you talk to those people and say, hey, I heard you had this problem, tell me about the problem, I'd really love to fix it, then when you fix the problem, they suddenly become like lifelong advocates for your app. And even though that's one person at a time, we'll know what one bad review can do for your app. So. There's also ratings are really important. If you look at the top paid apps, they're mostly 4, 5, 4.5, 5-star reviews. Ignore number 2. This is the New Zealand App Store. Apparently we have really bad taste. And I wanted to use a screenshot that had Camera Plus in it, and we're not this high at the moment. So in everything you do, make sure that you communicate well, especially in the App Store where you get few opportunities to do it. Typically, your app description is used to indicate how serious you are about your current sale. Very serious. Luckily, this one doesn't. Currently, it says for a limited time, which is a little embarrassing. But this is obviously also an opportunity to convince people to buy your app. And this works in the same way that marketing in the real world does. And we use some favorable quotes from people who sound respectable, and then we highlight key features and we talk about them in, this is sort of a bullet list. It's not really a bullet list, it's a star list. But we talk about them in a way that makes them exciting. So it's pretty much just marketing. But it's something, so it's nothing new, but it's something that is often neglected. And I think as developers, I want to put all the effort into coding the app. I don't want to put the effort into doing this sort of thing, but it's really essential that you put effort into this, especially if you're working by yourself, because if you don't, then all of your coding just goes to waste because people aren't going to find out about it. Same is true of your screenshots. Don't just take screenshots. The first screenshot you find of your app, make sure the screenshots really show off your app because they are the thing that people look at first off when they're getting your things. You also get an opportunity to talk to users when you do an update. So this is maybe not that cool. Even if Apple do this when they're being bashful, this isn't great for your users. Releasing an update is an opportunity to re-engage with people. So you focus on the things that matter to people. So we talk about new features that we've added to make their life easier, fixes they've been hanging out for most of the time, and or just things that excite you about the update. So I feel that showing excitement and pride in your work is contagious, and releasing exciting updates to your app builds this momentum for your app. I don't recommend bulleted lists because I find them really dull. I read the first point, the last point, and skip the rest. So this is the first 2 paragraphs of the what's new from our version 3 release. And according to this, the most exciting and important thing about Camera Plus, the new Camera Plus, is the new icon. Which one's which? It's on there. It's like night and day, and this is what we describe as the big thing right at the front. So we use a style of communication. It's chatty, it's friendly, and if you've been following Camera Plus, you know that it's sometimes irreverent. But what this style of communication does, and what all of these things do, putting all this effort into your marketing materials, you're kind of completing the loop from putting effort into your app to putting effort into the way that you talk about your app, is it cements the impression that there are real people working on the app, and there are people who really care about the app and about making the app as good as possible for the users, and basically saying we really care about this app, which allows your users to really care about it too, and that's a total win-win. So thank you very much.